Please welcome to the stage Will Hale, who will be comparing this panel. Please give Will a warm round of applause.
It's a pleasure, really, to be hosting the Agents of Transformation panel this afternoon. For those who attended last year, you'll probably recall it was a really popular session. Doesn't seem so much now, everyone's leaving, but not just because of the drinks, but because a lot of this conversation went on into the networking part that we're going to do afterwards, and also late on into the night for a number of different people. Before we get started, there's two numbers that I think people will find particularly interesting. The first one is the 9%. 9% of technologists today are deemed as agents of transformation, which makes them an incredibly rare bunch. But on the other side, there's companies that in the next 5 to 10 years, in order to remain competitive, need 45% of their technologists to be agents of transformation, which presents a huge opportunity for so many different people to further their careers, but also not just help companies become competitive, but to actually shape the success of those organizations. So the question that I have is, well, what is an agent of transformation? And there are a number of different attributes that these individuals have. Today we're going to talk about three specifically, which is firstly, agents of transformation have a customer-centric mindset. They champion innovation and AI ops, but they're committed to development. As we go through, we do want people to contribute and ask questions, so please feel free to get your phone out. If you don't necessarily want to ask a question, you may want to vote on one, so feel free to participate. A few drinks in, there may be some punchy questions, but John will be making sure he filters them, so feel free to ask away. Without further ado, though, I'd like to welcome to the stage Eamon, Oliver, and Cole, our agents of transformation. Take a seat. Cheers. Take a seat, gents. If you wouldn't mind just spending a minute introducing yourselves, what you do in your day-to-day, and how long you've been using AppDynamics for, that would be really helpful.
My name is Ayman Asaf. I'm CIO in supply and trading at BP. My primary accountability is in middle and back office, globally and across all commodities and products. I also have an additional accountability in the last year or so as a lead for a program we're calling Connected Innovation, which is really, it's about digital disruption.
Thank you. Carl?
Yeah, I'm Carl. I head technology for Collinson Travel Experiences. My main responsibility seems to be anything with a switch on it at Collinson. We're involved in a very major transformation, and my primary goal there is to lead that and to bring that to a successful conclusion. My journey with AppDynamics started around about September time last year.
Oliver?
Ollie President, Global Product Management for Ensono, so we're a managed service provider, and I'm responsible for bringing to market hybrid infrastructure and application management services and providing insight to my clients.
Thank you, gents.
My journey started about September last year as well, Carl.
And I didn't answer this question. It feels like forever, but it's only 2 years.
Okay. Today, we've talked a lot about the expectations, increasing expectations of consumers, and we know that agents of transformation focus on this really heavily. So, Ollie, perhaps you could share at Ensono how you use customer-centric thinking that drives the innovation that you do.
Sure. So we have two customers, really. We have the direct customer, the organization who's entrusted their IT to us to run, and then the customer who's actually consuming that IT, normally the end user, typically the public, maybe an internal audience. And so when you think about those customers and what's important to them, you've really got to think about the outcome that they're looking for and how you measure that outcome, evidence the outcome. So we typically sign sort of service level agreements that aren't on kind of infrastructure availability, but actually the ability of the application to transact. And that might involve not just the ability to transact, but how fast it's tracking those performance characteristics. And so that's really kind of key when you think about the customer and what they want out of it.
Oh, that makes it particularly easy with having two different customers that you have to keep happy. Carl, in Collison, how do you measure the initiatives that you're driving around customer experience?
Sure, and like Oliver, actually, we also have two layers of customers. And what we find it was really key, in a world where there are so many metrics, you really need to find the one or two metrics that really drive your business. So in our case, our consumers access benefits when they travel, and that is the key metric that drives everything else. From there, you can identify what the secondary metrics are, things like downloads and various different digital engagements. I think having those two tiers allows us, when we're looking at the changes that happen, either through upgrades and changes to our infrastructure, new product launches, etc., we can understand what how the secondary changes in those numbers affect the primary number that we're interested in. So I think that's the real root cause. Understand these two layers. And I think the last thing I'd say, the definition of this primary number is key. If you were to look at Collinson maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it would talk about its primary numbers being lounge visits. Now we talk about consumers accessing benefits. Essentially, they're very similar, but by changing the language around what that key metric is, you change the thinking around how you're going to implement it and in affect it.
Okay. Is there a specific KPI that you use to measure?
As I say, yeah, the key one is consumers accessing benefits. If when that goes up, then everything, all the other numbers around there will also go in the right direction. So you can boil the whole thing down just to the one number. You know, it's like if you go onto Google and do a search, you're going to get 30 million bits of data thrown at you. Really, all you can do is look at the first one or two. So it's really important for us to have that clear vision of what number actually drives our business.
We talked a lot about agents of transformation throughout the day and how they use tools and technologies to drive and improve their customer experience. Eamon, could you share how you use tools such as AppDynamics to drive customer experience at BP?
Like my two colleagues, we also have two types of customers. We've got the internal customers who consume our technology platforms, but then the external customers who consume the company services. I'm going to specifically talk about, I've got one example, which is, I think, because of it's, for various reasons, I think it's quite powerful. And it's internal customer. And if the internal customers are happy, the external will be happy anyway. This example goes back when we were started to deploy AppDynamics. Before that, we just started. In fact, we've been almost 3 years in a journey to move to cloud. And one of our critical applications had been migrated to cloud, and we were having some issues, challenges, almost every other day. Our customers, I mean, you know, they're talented, they're very demanding, they expect things to run in a very transparent, seamless way, just like you're driving your car. You know, you don't go to the car, think, is it going to start or not? Is it going to break halfway or not? So you get into that situation. That really made the relationship with the customer, a bit challenging. One of our DevOps leads one weekend decided I'm going to expedite it and I'm going to deploy AppDynamics. And it's honestly, it's like switching a light on a dark room, and suddenly you started to see things you didn't see it existed there. Very quickly worked on this, sorted out the obvious ones. But what was also valuable is that we started to have, with AppDynamics, we started to get alerts before things go wrong. It's like, hey, the database is a little bit slow. So we can fix things before they become a problem, before they take up more of the time of the team or the customer in this case. Again, the reason I picked up on this example, we've quickly realized also, we can use AppDynamics to help us in our migration to cloud, because we can take a baseline. It's just like taking your blood pressure, etc., and we can see how if it's not, it's got to be at least the same or better. So that was very, very helpful in that aspect. Another thing happened is what we saw with that particular application. We still saw some issues from time to time. So the DevOps team lead noticed that the users were doing some stuff like they do cut and paste before they do their daily runs, etc. So reach out to them and say, hey, we've noticed you doing this stuff, and you rerun it. They explain to him sometimes they cut and paste the wrong values. So, he offered to that, we can automate this for you. And again, that is very, very quickly improved the experience. I know I'm giving a long answer. The last part of this, which is, to me, and actually the business, is what I describe and started to use, is like the London Underground tube map. As we started to, with the real-time data going through those, as we almost flicking the switch on, applications of deploying AppDynamics, it's almost like a new station being added to the network, and or lights into those stations. So we started to see, flows, end-to-end business flows through those applications. We have a very complex, I shouldn't call it very complex environment, because you've got front, middle, and back office systems. We've got different ownership, different people own different aspects of those systems. We interact with the group systems. It just feels like a mesh. With AppDynamics and with this, which AppDynamics team helped us do, we literally can flick on the switch like it's central line, and you see how it goes. And the customer, the users, as well as our teams now started to see things they didn't realize was happening between the different applications.
Understood. Thanks. The other area of focus we talked about earlier that we'll talk about today is the championing of innovation. And we finished up on talking about some tools there. One thing that stood out from the research that I've done is 70% of agents of transformation focus 70% of their time, should I say, on positively driving innovation. I know that culture is important to you, Eamon, so would you be able to share how you use what you're doing, the projects, the programs, to drive the innovative culture at BP?
I mentioned one of my additional accountabilities, which is my second job in a way, and I'm very passionate about it. The program we call Connected Innovation. It's sponsored by the top level, the CEO and the executive leadership team. And its objective is to drive the culture change. It's to challenge and disrupt the way we think and operate, but also to try to foster ideas, digital innovation ideas, and take them and incubate them and help drive the business transformation. And the way we're doing this, with multiple, to make this a success, we're making we're doing a lot of things. One of them is we allocated budget for that, because sometimes you get ideas and people go, oh, we tried this, it works, and then you go, where is the budget for it? So we put a budget for this, locked it just for this program. We have ongoing communications about the program. We have a very simple, streamlined process. So you have an idea, it goes from ideation to here is funding within weeks, couple of weeks, up to maximum probably a month. You'll have that sorted out. We have also worked with partners, and we're talking about big global technology partners to very small startups. So we get funding approved on a Wednesday. On Monday, the team was on the ground and actually doing the work. I think I mentioned education and training. The other thing which is AppDynamics helped with, I'm sure like other companies, we all try to allocate what we call the innovation time. So we say up to 10 to 20% is to create and innovate, etc. All what it takes is one single incident that could wipe out someone's whole week, and then they're actually playing a catch-up. With AppDynamics, and we have, we've been DevOps for a few years now. I think what will happen with intelligent operations and monitoring will do much less ops and more dev and more creative, etc. And we started to see this, which is great, in terms of creativity and in terms of innovation in the space. You just give the people time, and they'll come up with great ideas, and we have lots of talented people.
So what I take from that is you're moving really quickly in terms of the programs and projects you're driving, but at the same time automating some of the maybe business as usual components.
Absolutely. Automation, we want to automate the hell out of everything.
Yeah, it's a good point actually. So on that, agents of transformation, they talk a lot about tools and cutting edge tools, and as those are terms that people use. AI ops is one that comes up a lot at the moment. So Oliver, would you be able to share why you're particularly excited about AI ops at the moment?
Sure. I think AI ops, like the previous presenter said, it's not optional anymore. It's absolutely something we need to embrace, particularly as a service provider, where the sheer volume of data we have coming in, when something occurs and you kind of correlate or you need to correlate that something's going on and take action. I think we were talking about this in the green room. We've kind of passed the point at which it's easy for a human being to analyze all of that data set, make a precise decision very quickly. So it's kind of become a necessity. A recent client advisory board we had, I was talking to one of the client CIOs, and he was saying to us, everybody keeps telling me IT is getting simpler and just put it in the cloud, but actually my IT estate is now spread across multiple data centers, public cloud, all sorts of different environments, different providers, and it's become more and more complex. Rather than kind of hold back developers who want to use whatever tool set they like and deploy to an environment, I think we need to find ways to kind of embrace that and enable it, and some of the tooling that we're talking about today and enables you to do that and not kind of hold and constrain and govern too tightly, but enable the business to do what it needs.
Understood. And on that theme of automating certain tasks, what sort of things are you looking at automating at the moment, Carl, with your operations?
Yeah, I mean, I think in concert with what we've heard today and with my colleagues up here, this is often about creating extra time in people's day to do the exciting things. So we're looking at all of the mundane processes, all the processes that we do over and over again, and the ones actually that if you look if you're honest about your IT deployments, are probably the ones that you get wrong most often, the ones that people do most often. Complacency and things slips in. But it isn't really just about that. That's really the here and now. That's the necessity for today. I think it's also about trying to have a look forward and say, when I need to spin up that new service, do I need to spin it up in AWS or AliCloud or Google? To really start to look forward ahead and say, don't wait until your application is in distress and then auto-scale. Try and auto-scale before that distress occurs. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand more about our profile as we run so that we can make better decisions going forward. Now, Oliver mentioned our conversation in the green room. Really, the complexity and the number of elements in there, it's just huge. It goes beyond what a human can possibly keep in their head, and it goes beyond what a team can keep on a spreadsheet or on a war board or whatever. So we really need this technology now to do that for us. So, right today it's about trying to get the basics as automated as possible. And it's about keeping one eye on the future and say, what will we be able to do in the future? And let's get on with that right now and not wait.
Understood. And with lots of people talking about future technologies, as you'd expect, and concepts and ideas, if anyone is considering AI ops, what advice would you give them, Eamon?
I'll start with what my vision is, and I know maybe I'm oversimplifying it. We went from monitoring of something is not working, go look at it in a way, to now with AppDynamics, hey, something doesn't look right there. It's just this is slower, this is a little bit. It's like looking at temperatures higher, and before it becomes a problem, you look at it, and as example I used before, you ideally fix it before it becomes a serious issue, so it's little operations. My vision is, rather than, hey, I think there is a problem, ideally, and I'm here, AI maybe, or something equivalent, is, hey, I think there is a problem, or there was a problem with this particular application. I logged a ticket for you, and I figured it out what it was, and it was perhaps a database. We needed to do some maybe increased memory or whatever it is. I've done that for you. It's working fine. I've updated the lessons learned, the RCA. I closed the ticket, and I'm just letting you know type of things. Or if it was an infrastructure failure, I just rolled it over to another server or something like that. That's where we absolutely want to go. My advice is, it's not going to happen overnight. And I believe everyone should have that vision, should have the strategy to say that's where I want it to be. and start in a smaller steps. And I think I heard earlier presentation talk about anomaly detection, for example, automated root cause analysis, etc. Just take it one step at a time and see where it takes you. But you should start putting your hands on it. I mean, the account director and manager know this. I've been, as soon as I heard the product, I was like, when can I have it? When I can have it? You know, and my team is eager to do this. So start, play with it and take it from there.
That makes sense. The final thing we were talking about earlier, one of the attributes that agents of transformation have is their ability for development. And there was the stats that companies will need 45% of their technologists to be agents of transformation in order to remain competitive in the next 5 to 10 years. Surely that presents a huge opportunity for people trying to drive their careers. Well, to you, Oliver.
It does, and I mean your stats I don't think reflect the audience here necessarily, because I think we've probably got more in this room, having circulated and spoken to a lot of people who understand this connection that you have to create between the business and IT. And I think there's two primary skill areas. As technologists, clearly we have deep knowledge around certain technologies and probably breadth of understanding to be able to see the big picture and the IT landscape. But the soft skills of being able to communicate with the CFO, with business leaders, with application owners, those folk who at the end of the day are the ones whose KPIs, goals, drivers we're trying to fulfill, that's equally as important. In fact, probably more so as we move into a world where business is being disrupted constantly and looking to IT to be a partner rather than just a cost center.
Yeah, that makes sense. So on that, Eamon, lots of technologists keep up to date with modern technologies. What other things are you looking for when you're recruiting at BP?
I wouldn't call it other things I would look for. I think I would put it in what things I want more of. So we absolutely been and we continue and we want more of the diverse talent. So our intake of graduates and interns is growing. We are playing a lead role in the women in technology event organization. So we want to bring that talent into the organization and technology. Technology is for everyone. Also, when we're trying, and again, it's not just about recruiting, it's about developing internally within the organization. So we are looking, when we want people that have the mentality of try fast. I wouldn't call it fail fast, but learn fast. People want to change the world. People believe, they challenge the status quo. That's the sort of mindset. It's really around the mindset that can help us drive the disruption and the digitalization faster.
When I was doing research on this topic, one statistic that came up was 26% of IT leaders and managers felt underfulfilled in terms of their current role, which is quite worrying. And it also seems like a bit of a waste, considering that everyone's driving innovation. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, I think there are two sides to that. One, if you've got people in your organisation and they're feeling unfulfilled, it's kind of like driving a car with half throttle. And organisations need to be much more open to hearing the ideas of their staff and the people they work with, and giving them a bit more free rein to bring some of these ideas to fruition. And also recognising that not every idea is a great idea at the start. Often a poor idea leads to a great idea. I'm very mindful when I was in short trousers at school, we used to have milk floats, electric milk floats go around. And a chap called Clive Sinclair came up with this rather horrible electric car that nobody particularly liked. But Tesla certainly wasn't put off by those two experiences and now produces great electric cars, and Formula E is a good example of that. So not everything that you do, not everything that your staff do will be great first time, but it may very well be the first step on a journey to something which is really great. If you are on the other side of the fence, if you're feeling like you're not fulfilling your potential, you really have two choices. Choice number one is to change your organisation. We talked a little bit about getting the soft skills to better communicate to different colleagues with different skill sets, CFOs, CEOs, and get a vision across. So you need to develop those skills, and you need to keep pushing that hard. And I would also say to people, do some stuff. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. The other thing I'd say, though, is if you try that and you don't get on, then it's time to change the organisation. As technologists, we live in a world where unemployment in our industry is incredibly low. And I saw for one skill set in technology, it's about 0.3%. Be brave. If your organisation won't change and give you what you want, there are lots of organisations out there who will. And you're welcome to come and see me in the bar later.
We're all worried.
Yeah.
Good one. Finally, Ollie, so if there's anyone in the audience that doesn't necessarily feel like they're fulfilling their potential and they've tried a number of different things, is there any further advice that you would give them?
I'd say never say no to an opportunity to do something interesting would be my first one, whether that means getting really out your comfort zone and possibly failing fast, but learning something from it. The other one's probably just spend more time talking to the business if you're a technologist in any capacity, whether it's getting involved in the really early phase of a project, the scoping, the business case, the financial type conversation, and then see it all the way through. So I'd just say never say no to an opportunity to do something interesting or challenging.
Yeah, or speak to
Carl.
Carl.
Job at Carl.
Yeah. Thanks, Jez. We've got around 10 minutes, so there's questions that have come through. The first one is, let's go to yourself, Eamon. How do you measure the ROI on APM?
I think for me it's both customer satisfaction and team satisfaction. I think there isn't a particular measure I use, but if we're happy with what we're happy with what you're achieving, and the customer is happy with that, I think it's worth the investment. And there isn't in particular, but there is also, again, an example when you say ROI on investment. For me, for example, in AppDynamics, when we deployed it, one of the things that very quickly was visible is by deploying it, we have reduced our maintenance contract, and with the third parties, and in a way it paid for itself, because what happened is we moved more to offshore, we reduced the number of people in the support. So to me, again, it paid for its own cost.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Well, I think so. I think most people look for hard and soft cost savings when you speak to them, and that's certainly a hard saving. Anything to add, Jens?
Clearly, the business case is going to vary wildly depending on the situation, the application, whether you're using third party, etc. I'm talking to somebody from financial services in the room who remained nameless at one of the breaks. They came up with an interesting idea. They use a lot of third-party development organizations. And they were saying, well, if I could apply technologies like this to pre-production and pick up code errors and challenges around optimizing and reducing capacity and all the rest of it early, it avoids me paying for the testing more than once in the first place, paying for the fixing of the bug when it's in production and the impact, having to explain to the business, it's just, you can build a fairly easy cost case around that, which I thought was quite an interesting one, because normally we don't necessarily think about that particular use case.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The other thing we've got to be careful of as well is a lot of these classic business cases are old school thinking. I always think that the threat to most businesses isn't probably the competition you've been running at hard against for years and years and years. It's probably the competition you don't know about. It's probably somebody in a garage somewhere who's putting together something new, and they won't be wasting a huge amount of time over-analysing things like return on investment for particular pieces of software, particular investments they're making. What they'll be doing is just spending a lot of time analysing how they get to their goals, understanding what their key metrics are and how to get there. So if you have a piece of technology that's going to help you get to those overarching goals and you can afford it, you should use it. You shouldn't spend too much time bean counting it.
Spend money.
Not quite, but
Yeah. Right, there's another question here, not to anyone in particular, so feel free, whoever would like to go first. Did you find any cultural challenges in rolling out AppDynamics among your staff? And if you did, how did you overcome those to get buy-in?
I think change is always challenging. So, in our case, we had an incumbent, and we had obviously champions for that incumbent. So you will always find people who are comfortable with the tool that they're using or comfortable with the process that they're using. For me, it's about saying, what do we need to do next? Why is this tool going to give us a step up from where we go next? And for us at Collinson, it was the tool that we were using was fine for sort of post-event analytics. The question I was asking is, how do we know when the next thing's going to happen? How do we predict it going forward? How do we make sure we get on a tool set so that we can take advantage of ML and AI going forward? And that was really the power of the argument that, in my mind, moved us on to the next goal, is putting those challenges to people and saying, great, the tool you've got is great, you've used it for 20 years, fantastic, but things are changing. And how is this tool that you're using going to meet that goal?
I think there's always a natural human kind of resistance to some of these fairly fundamental changes, but the interesting one on this is where the previous presenter talked about this finger pointing that may go on between applications and infrastructure worlds, which are often two different worlds in IT departments. This breaks that barrier down, and initially there might be a whole bunch of suspicion, oh dear, people are kind of going to be able to point the finger more easily, but actually you find it becomes pretty quickly more collaborative. So it's very clear what the issue is, we can fix it much more quickly. There's none of the debate that goes on, and actually I found it a positive experience rather than kind of the resistance that people might initially have.
Yeah, just to add to this, similar. You get people that just absolutely, before, they love it, they want to, just can't wait to deploy it. Some is like, oh, we have already monitoring to try to see the difference between what this provides and others. I think it sometimes is a challenge. So earlier today we had this dashboarding session, to try to, the best approach to it is to start to deploy it and talk about it, share the examples where it added value, where it made a difference, and people see that sometimes rather than try to talk about it as a product, talk about what this product does and how did it change this customer experience, give people time. And this is one of the aspects also, is because people are busy trying to do their day job. The last thing is they want to deploy another product. Give them more time to explore, and we have something we use in BB, which is explore, think, do. And I think that's the sort of mentality you want to spread, and that it will help.
Great. Another question. Technology moves slowly in older, larger, brackets, risk-averse organizations. How did you go about encouraging change and managing the risk that came with it?
I'll very quickly start and then I'll pass on. The example I mentioned around creating this connected innovation and putting some sort of program or network to try to, the objective of this is to go wide across the entire organization. In trading, we got front, middle, and back office. It's our traders to, to finance teams. And being able to do all what I've mentioned earlier around this program, from comms to funding, and I think that will help to spread this quicker. Sorry.
So I think for us it's about it's a couple of things. Firstly, it's about recognising that in this sort of organisation you describe, chances are the problems and challenges are quite well known, and so the whole bunch of people get used to that pain and get comfortable with that pain. And it's really about being a bit more disruptive than that and saying, actually, no, this level of pain actually is holding us back. It's preventing us getting on and improving the customer's experience. It's preventing us, taking that next step forward. But ultimately, sooner or later, you have to be disruptive to your own organisation. So you can spend a lot of time working out good processes and good practices. Sooner or later, you have to disrupt what you've put in place yourself. So if you're in an organisation like that, you spent a lot of time building up processes and practices that work okay, but you think they could get better, start thinking, if you were somebody else coming in, how would you disrupt what you've already done? And that's what the sorts of things that drive you to the next step. Managing the risk is the difficult part. Nobody wants to be reckless when they're disrupting things. You've got something to lose. So that's really about looking around your organisation, look at the low-hanging fruit, because if you can start to disrupt the parts that have the least impact if you get it wrong, people will start to get in that mindset of saying, yeah, we can change things, we can disrupt things, and then they can move on to the more risky areas with some confidence and with some knowledge behind them. So start small, but you've got to disrupt your own process, you've got to disrupt your own organisation.
You've got to make sure that people in the organisation feel comfortable to do so. Just really open to ideas, trying things. And the mantra that I had pinned above my desk for about 3 or 4 years was Grace Hooper, former US Navy and the grandmother of COBOL for those mainframers out there, who basically said, the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, we've always done it this way. And if you constantly think of it in those terms and challenging, why are we doing it this way? Is there a better way of doing it? That for me is really important.
In a way that obviously is less risk averse, as you said there, to start it off. Okay. I think we've got time for another question. Can you tell us about the adoption of AppDynamics? How did you get everyone trained and using it?
So I can talk about the 15 days we spent putting it in, if that's of any use. So for us, we were already at the point of our transformation where we were getting into that mindset of, we've got to move quickly. We've got to disrupt what we do. We've got to do things differently. So for us, it was about getting a proof of value into the organisation quickly, and getting exposure from our developers and testers, and also from the business folks. So everybody got an early look at it, because most of these tools, in fact, most of the tools you're going to see if you go looking across our entire industry are not that hard to learn. We already saw the drawing earlier in the day of the nicer UIs and the more complicated backends. So most of the vendors are going to come to you with a new tool. Actually, the challenge won't necessarily be actually learning the tool. It'll be getting that mindset shift. That said, any tool you buy, you have to think of it as a partnership approach. Don't ever think about it as, I'm buying a tool from a vendor who, if the vendor's going to walk away after you've paid the money, they're probably the wrong vendor. So we've had a lot of time with support from AppDynamics in our organisation, understanding what we do, working with our developers. 1 or 2 of the people I've started to think probably work for me. They're in the office so often. And I think that partnership approach is also a very key element of getting this thing done.
Second, the proof of value. Absolutely short, sharp, demonstrate some value, get all the different stakeholders to see that, and then figure out, specifically to the training question, figure out who actually needs to know what, because you don't need to give everybody all the details. So the folk who really need to understand the dashboarding, the ability to create these scorecard type views, versus the folk who need to drill deep and how to interpret all the back-end analytics.
For me, the most important part is what you said, is the partnership. And as soon as I saw the product, I knew I've been waiting for this for 15 years. I knew I wanted it. But I knew the product, the AppDynamics, the product. I didn't know anything about AppDynamics, the company. So the culture, the way they interacted with us, the way it exactly felt the same way. I actually said the exact term recently. They feel like an extension of my team or part of my team. So that is the culture, especially in digitalization. The vendor, supplier, customer. I know you used it already a couple of times. It doesn't work. You want to work with companies that are in partnership with you. And AppDynamics, and the people we worked with, they exemplified that.
I think that's a lovely note to finish upon. Thank you. Thank you very much, gents, and cheers.